Hi, my name's Dan, and this video is one in a series of videos that I'm doing about using materials in Unreal. And in this one, I'm going to dive into the main basics of an Unreal material and talk about the base material node. So I've just got a third-person template map set up here, and I've got the starter content in, but nothing else. I'm going to create a material. So this is kind of similar to creating a whole lot of things in Unreal. You should be getting used to this sort of thing by now. I've just right-clicked in the content area. I'm going to go up to Material, which is one of the main ones highlighted up at the top, and it creates me a new material. I'm going to call it My Map, and press Enter to get into Edit it. Okay. So the thing that I want to focus on is this node here, which is the node that gives you all the outputs, and you need to plug everything that you're doing for your material into this node, which will then apply this as a material. And there's a whole lot of pins here. So I'm going to go down these pins quickly, talking about most of them. But what I don't want to do is to start doing too much detail here, because this is meant to be just a starting point for your understanding of materials. I do want to point out that I'm using Unreal 4.26 for this, and the pins that are available on here have changed over time. And when I went looking for some information, I went to the Unreal docs, and they've got a main material node reference here, which has not been updated since 4.9, which is quite a few iterations ago. And their main material node breakdown has got most of the nodes that we're going to see, but there's quite a few nodes in there that some of these things I'm going to have to be guessing at because I haven't found information on them. I've got a reasonable understanding of most of this. Anyway. So we start at the top. The most important is base color, and in fact, we're going to plug something into that to show you that working. So I'm going to drag off there. The thing that's maybe slightly unusual, you might just think you want to type in color here, but actually you want the word constant. And you want a constant 3 vector or a constant 4 vector for a color. When you double click that, it opens up a color picker, and we're going to have a nice red color. I often get caught out by the fact that I've picked a color here, I've done the saturation, but I've forgotten to do the brightness value. So pull that up. Oh, it's a pink. I'd rather have a red. Get into the reds. That's kind of red. There we go. Okay. Now that appears on here, and it appears in the preview over here on the left-hand side as well. That's the only thing that we're going to plug in. I'm going to show you that applied to a surface. So let's just flick out of there and drag that material onto this box. It's there. It takes a second or two to upload. And there we are, it's pink. Okay, go back into Edit. I'm not going to make any more changes. I'm just going to talk about some of the rest of these pins. So the next set of pins, metallic specular roughness and anisotropy, I don't know how to pronounce that, are to do with the shininess of the surface and how it appears, either more or less metallic, shiny or matte. And I'll be looking at those in the next video in this series. Emissive color is your ability to put in a color that, if you want your material to glow, to actually emit light, and that'll affect other objects around it. The next two, opacity and opacity mask, they're grayed out, and what pins are available here depends on various settings that you have down in the details on the left hand side here. And we've got it set to opaque at the moment, so we have no opacity settings that we need to do. Again, a later video will deal with those. We've got then a normal pin. This is to do with what's called normal vectors and bump mapping, and we'll be talking about that in another video coming up, so let's not deal with that now. And there's a possibility for tangent maps, which is to do with this anisotropic thing with shininess. World position offset is something that will let you to do not just faking bumps using the material, but actually to make the position change of things on the surface to give you bumps. I don't know how that differs to the world displacement. Those two seem similar. Tessellation is something to do with hardware acceleration. Subsurface color. I'm not going to touch on that in the videos that I'm doing. Subsurface rendering is something that's particularly useful for certain kinds of surfaces. The most common one is skin, where actually there's a kind of translucent layer at the top and the reflection happens slightly underneath the surface. There's a couple of custom pins here, and I'm guessing that they're not specified. I don't know how they're used. They're pretty new. Ambient occlusion is, again, to do with emissiveness and color, and it's the fact that if you have a red object next to a white object, then the white object, even if it's not set to be reflective, will have a certain cast of redness to it. So this is to do with this kind of casting of color onto different parts. Refraction, not to be confused with reflection, again is linked to opacity, and if you've got see-through materials, a refractive material will bend the light, which is exactly what a prism does when it creates a rainbow. Again, I'm not going to be dealing with that in a later video. Pixel depth offset, I have no clue about this, so we'll move on quickly to not highlight my ignorance. The final one is shading model. So again, this does not appear in the Unreal documentation that I just flicked up and showed you. However, they do have a page about shading models. So I'll quickly show you that. And I will link to this in the description down below. Actually, you can choose different shading models. Let's flick back. For your material here, shading model. So this is default lit. And this is to do with what you want to use your material for or how complicated it's going to be. So we've got subsurface version, we've got pre-integrated skin, we've got hair, cloth, eyes, various different things you might want. The materials in Unreal are really powerful. What I don't know is how this pin differs from this setting, and I presume this is to allow you to change your shading model dynamically whilst the game's running, to be able to plug in some value to that. Let's quickly go back to that documentation that I showed you there for shading models, just to have a look at those. And it gives you examples: default lit, subsurface, skin, clear coat, etc. And if you want to look at more advanced features of materials and rendering, this is a nice place to tell you how to get started and some of those things. There's loads of stuff in the Unreal documentation. As has just highlighted, some of it is a little bit out of date, but there's loads of really helpful stuff in there. Anyway, this has been a quick tour of this. Over the next few videos, we'll start to dig into some of these things like the shininess and texturing and bump mapping and a few other things like that. But that is it from me for now.